Hi guys, my name is Timo Parker, I'm a vocal coach and I'm here to help you to improve your singing voice. Someone asked me the other day, how much should I practice, how often, and also what are signs of fatigue when you are singing. And this is something I want to talk about in this video. How much should you sing, how many days a week, and also for how long. This video is based on observations I made the past 10 years. As a singer myself, but also as a teacher, I saw the development of my students and also what I heard from colleagues. But please be aware that your body is different and my observations might be different to yours. So just take it as a general guideline and not as rules that are set in stone. So let's take a look at how often you should practice to reach your optimum singing potential. Let's dive right into it. Before we talk about how long and how often you should practice, there's one thing that I have to mention which is really important. And that is, if you're getting a sore throat or a hoarse voice, you're doing something wrong. That means you're misusing your voice and something in your throat or in your body is working against you. Common problems are something like air pressure, too much tension, or you're using the wrong muscles or muscle combinations. And there are many other reasons why you might get hoarse or sore throat. The most important thing is that you admit it and stop doing what you are doing at the moment. So you're not getting hoarse or sore anymore. What you should do instead is trying to identify the problem, maybe work with a vocal coach and also learn more about vocal anatomy so you really know what's going wrong. Because overriding old behaviors that lead to soreness or hoarseness takes actually longer than learning something from scratch. So try to eliminate those factors as soon as possible so you are healthy and you also grow faster. If it happens, just make sure that you rest your voice properly. That means at least 48 hours of not singing, not so much speaking. And if you're speaking, don't whisper, just speak in a normal, relaxed tone and just give your voice the time and the space to recover properly before you start singing again. So if you're using a good vocal technique and you're not getting sore or you're not getting hoarse, this is when you should ask the question, how often should I practice? And it differs from person to person. We are all different, but there is a silver lining to the practicing routine that I've seen in a lot of people. In my opinion, daily singing is not very advantageous for us singers because we are using muscles in our throat, and like any other muscle, they need rest because muscles grow in the rest period and not during the workout. Because training at the end is stress for the muscles and that's why they adapt. And if we continue putting more and more stress on our muscles in our throat and specifically on our vocal cords, this stress can build up and lead to injuries or to over practicing, that you are like fatigued all the time, and that's why you try to overcompensate with other muscles which actually shouldn't be involved in singing. That's why make sure to give your voice proper rest, because this will help you to keep your voice healthy and also function on an optimum level for singing. If you want to incorporate a consistent voice practice, I found that 4 to 5 singing sessions or workouts are optimal for voice growth. So you still have 2 to 3 days off and you make sure that your muscles recover properly. And your weekly routine could look something like this. For example, 2 days of practicing, 1 day of rest, 2 days of practicing, and then followed by 2 days of rest, or maybe just one. Try around and see what works best for you, but just make sure that when you come into a practice session that you are not already fatigued. And if you have a day where you want to practice and you don't feel like 100%, take it easy. So modify it to your needs. So if you're starting out, 3 days per week can also be enough. But just make sure that you really get your rest days in. That's the most important point about voice practice. So you can make sure to progress continuously throughout your career and you're not hitting a plateau or you're not constantly fatigued with your voice. The next question would be, how long should you practice? Beginners should practice less than, for example, an advanced singer. So I want to give you a rough guideline. As I said, nothing is set in stone. Try it out for yourself, but normally we tend to do too much than too little. So as a beginner, first of all, who's a beginner? I would say everyone who starts out learning singing based on muscles, on isolated muscle movements, is a beginner. Even though you had previous experience, maybe you haven't put the attention into the muscles that you're using. It's a process. You have to relearn or adjust your technique. As a beginner, I would start with something like 10 to 20 minutes. that can be already enough to work out the muscles that you need. If you're asking yourself, which muscles should I even work out, you can check out my playlist about essential voice anatomy, and there I explain some of the most important muscles and you can get started. A lot of those exercises are actually silent, so you can do them on the go wherever you are, and also those exercises don't take a lot of time. If you feel any signs of fatigue, I will talk about signs of fatigue in just a second, but if you feel them, if you feel any tension in your body, stop there. And even if your practicing session is less than 10 minutes, that's also fine. At least you're practicing and you're getting used to the habit of working out your voice. 20 minutes is the absolute maximum if you do some exercises to help your voice grow, and maybe a very, very, very simple song with little range that you can just sing along, have fun for like 3 to 5 minutes and then just stop. And rather do some ear training or like some theory. I have also some videos on this channel about music theory and getting started on the piano, so maybe use some more time on those topics if you still want to learn more, but just make sure you don't overdo it in the beginning with your voice. Coming to an intermediate student, and I would consider anyone intermediate that is able to put their thyroid cartilage into the ugulum, into this little spot here, because that means your yawning muscle is already quite strong and is able to pull the larynx all the way down. And also another thing that you might have as an intermediate student is 2.5 to 3 octave of legitimate vocal range. That means you don't use falsetto or air pressure and you're using the CT muscle to create high notes. And this is a level where you could probably work out a bit longer. And that would be around 20 minutes to an hour. Also, once again, start a little lower and build it up slowly. This practicing time also includes some repertoire. For example, you could practice something like 20 minutes of vocal exercises and then you have another 10-15 minutes working on a song. Like, look what works for you. And as an advanced singer, maybe even as a performer, you will be able to sing 3 hours a day. And this really depends on your aims, what you're working towards. But I think that more than 3 hours is really not really beneficial for your voice. And I know we heard stories of people singing all day for 6 to 8 hours. And this might go well for a while, but this is not a long-term solution. That's not something that you can do all year round. So make sure to not overdo it and stay within a time limit where you can actually recover from your singing day, so you can do it the next day or after the next day, depending where your rest days are. So vocal exercises are super important for your development because we're building your instrument with those exercises, but also make sure to not overdo it. I think half an hour to 45 minutes, it's an absolute limit for working on your technique, because you also want to make music, because it doesn't make sense if you're just practicing technique and you don't know how to apply it. So make sure that there's a balance between technique and music. In the beginning, it can be a little bit more focused on technique, but as soon as possible, you should try to incorporate it into songs and make music with it, because otherwise you don't know what you're practicing for. And if you don't apply it, it takes even longer to actually use it. So since we can't practice as long as instrumentalists, we should really make sure that the things that we are practicing or the exercises that we are doing are really assisting us in our process, because our practicing time day by day is limited, pretty much like an athlete that can't train all day. So what are signs of fatigue? First of all, our vocal cords don't have any pain receptors. That means that we can't really feel when it's enough. We can just feel it in the muscles that surround our vocal cords, because if you feel like you're getting sore or you're getting hoarse, then it's most likely already too late. One big hint that you're fatigued is that your performance is declining. You can't reach the notes anymore, your voice is not closing properly, maybe your voice even makes some noise, something like sounds a bit like this. And if this sound occurs, make sure to take a break and stop for the day. Come back next day if it's still tired. Do it the day after. Another sign is you don't feel like singing anymore, you feel emotionally drained. And probably one of the strongest things that you can spot in your body is tension. So if you build up tension in your body, this is also a sign that you have to relax again, take a break, or stop for the day. There's a very good test that you can actually do to determine how fatigued you are. So when you are singing low notes, you have to be really relaxed and your vocal cords just, swing around. They don't do much down there. And if you get very tense and your vocal cords get stiff, they lose the ability to be relaxed in the lower register. That means if you tense up, if you're very fatigued, your vocal cords can become stiff, and then you will lose the lowest notes of your range. So I would say a half note or maybe 2 half notes is okay, but everything over that is too much. So then you should definitely stop and rest your voice. So if you're not sure if you're tense, you maybe can't feel it yet, just go to your lowest notes, check beforehand where you were before you practiced, before you were singing, and check where you are at after the session. And this will give you great information on how tense you are. If you lost a fourth or even a fifth, then there's definitely way too much tension and you have to relax again. This is also the reason why our voice sounds very bassy and very resonant in the morning, because after we slept, the voice is completely relaxed, and that's why we have a very deep and resonant voice. And if you lose this ability, that means you've done too much. So this is a great test that you can do to see how fatigued you are or how tense you are. And just one general thought before we come to the end of the video. In general, it is better to undertrain than to overtrain. So if you're not sure if you're doing too much or too little, rather do less and bump the time or the days up instead of starting straight away with too much. Because at the end, overtraining forces you to take longer breaks and it can even lead to injuries. Whereas if you do slightly less, your risk of injury is very low and also the recovery time you need is less. That means you can practice next day again. You don't accumulate too much training, too much stress and too much tension. So for optimal voice growth, make sure you're resting your voice properly and you're not overdoing it so you can work out more frequently instead of having to take long periods of breaks because you did too much. I would also love to hear your observations. How long and how often do you practice? What is your experience? Leave it in the comment section below. If you've made it so far into this video, make sure to like it and subscribe to my channel. I have more voice content videos planned on this channel, so make sure to not miss out. Thank you so much. Take it easy and see you in the next video. Bye bye.